Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Room Report Pod. Stephen Clark here with Dylan Engler. We've got head coach Jack Castleberry from Fairleigh Dickinson. How are you, Coach?
I'm good, man. It's hard not to smile seeing thinking of you two as players, and now you have this podcast. It's crazy. I never thought I'd see this day.
Yeah, we're definitely excited to have you on. Having an active D1 head coach, give some insight, kind of in your history, coaching back when you were an assistant for FDU, and then kind of like what's going on now with your team now. Dill, why don't you get it started? I know you had some big hitter questions coming up.
Yeah, I guess, man. I'm just excited that we get somebody that actually has some ball knowledge on the podcast. Finally, man. A lot of times it's just me and Steven just speaking our minds doesn't make any sense. So uh,
Yeah.
I'm glad to have somebody that knows what they're doing. Um, Coach, I think first thing, obviously there's a big difference between being an assistant and a head coach. That goes without saying. What are the biggest challenges that you think you're facing, kind of between that transition, obviously from the Citadel to Fairleigh Dickinson, being assistant and now being the head coach? What are kind of the biggest differences there? Because it's one thing to be in the seat where you're not making the decisions. You're like, oh, I would do this, I would do this. It's really easy in your head, and then you actually get onto that stage and it's a completely different story. So, what's the biggest differences there?
Yeah. I mean, I had some things I really struggled with, to be perfectly honest with you. You guys know, like when I was an assistant, I felt like, I mean, as I got older in the assistant path, if you will, I kind of became a little bit more of the disciplinarian at times for Coach B. But most of my career was really like, hey, relationship driven, like really guys need to come talk to me. I think I had really good relationships, and I struggled as a head coach in maintaining those relationships because the simple fact of the matter is the position is entirely different.
Yeah,
And if you look at basketball teams as being families, and I don't mean to say that in a cliche sense because everybody says family or whatever, but and just in the sense of like what the roles are, right? I've always thought of assistant roles, or excuse me, assistant coaches as being uncles, right? Like, you got to respect them. You know, they have some smart things to say. You know, you should listen to them, all that stuff. But you can also kind of kick it with your uncle sometimes. And like, he's not going to get you in trouble. He's going to be a little bit more on your side to some degree. Whereas, a lot of fathers are like, hey, I'm solely responsible for this kid's development. And if something screwed up here, I'm to blame. So there's a little bit more of a disciplinarian role. And dads tend to be a little bit harder on guys than uncles are, right? And so I think you shift from going from being the uncle to being the dad. And that's kind of a difficult relationship sometimes because when you're trying to demand the most out of someone, there is going to be a friction there.
sure.
And that has to be navigated in a very, I don't want to say sensitive, but in a very honest and in a different way than an assistant coach role is. And so it took me a while to figure out what that looked like.
Is that something you think that you can improve on throughout your coaching career? Or is that just the nature of the beast? Like you just can't have that type of relationship with the guys because you are the head coach.
Well, I think the situation I was in at FDU was a little bit unique. I'd just gotten there 1 year earlier, right? I feel like if I had become the head coach at the Citadel after being at the Citadel for 6 years,
Sure, sure.
that would have been a little bit smoother transition. The guys would have seen me transition in my role up the assistant coach ladder. At FDU, they really didn't get to see that, and I didn't have as much time with them. So I went from being, a guy that they knew pretty well, but a lot of my role I thought at FDU was just trying to get through to a few guys that we had struggled to get through to, or to assist Tobin in doing that, right?
Sure.
And then all of a sudden, in the blink of an eye, I'm sitting there, the guy who's got to be the disciplinarian, and it was I didn't think I handled it terribly well, and I don't think that it was the easiest situation without the years of background moving into the head coach role.
Sure.
But there's certainly a reality of becoming comfortable with what that looks like. I don't think you ever have the relationships the exact same way you do as when you were an assistant. But I think I found a spot now where they're very meaningful and very deep relationships. But there's still it's just not exactly the same. There's just a little bit of a little more distance to it
Sure.
day to day.
Sure.
I think another thing you could say with that too is just having good assistants under you because that's part of your role. Being the head coach should be more like hard on them, like you said, but then you also get good assistants under you that can have those type of relationships like you were talking about.
Yeah, 100%. And I've been really lucky. And when we went about hiring our staff, I mean, you guys know Coach Hayes, who's our associate head coach here. I mean, he's been unbelievable for us. We have Tom Kiley, we have Nate Stitchell, Austin Mick, Leo Alcaraz, like all these guys doing a phenomenal job of building those relationships. And what we did this year, and I stole this from Steve Forbes at Wake Forest. I heard him talking about this back when he was at East Tennessee State. They did a daily check-in where every player on the team had to come into the office at some point during that day. And this is really for in season. And I think it's been really impactful for us because it just gives, in season Division I college basketball, it can be very intense. Coaches are watching film nonstop. They're, trying to figure out how to game plan for the next game. They're trying to figure out what the players need to see from the last game. All these different things go into it. Some players are upset about playing time. Some players didn't play well. There's all these emotions that are going into this thing. And, when we started the daily check-ins where guys just have to come in, they literally just have to see one coach and say what's up. It doesn't have to be anything beyond that. But what it does is it takes away some of that distance that can be created over the course of a season where, hey, coach is just worried about things until he gets on the court, and now here he is, coach is getting on your tail again. And that's the last time the player saw him, he was on his tail again. This gets rid of that and lets these guys come in, and we just get to say what's up. And sometimes it literally is just, hey, man, how you doing? Dap each other up, head out. But other times it just leads to conversations that are just different and meaningful in a way that you wouldn't have expected to just happen because you've now created that opportunity. And I think it's helped build a lot of trust and kept the communication channels open over the course of the season.
Coach, I guess, is that something that you see working more at the low major / mid-major level, or is that like across the board? I just feel like there's less of an intimate relationship between head coaches and even assistant coaches and their players. Do you think you have, I guess, a step up on these high majors, for example, just being more intimate relationships with your guys?
You know what? I would love to be able to sit here and tell you, yeah, that's 100% the case, but I don't think that it really is.
Okay.
I think that coaches go about it different ways. I mean, I know a coach in the NCAA tournament right now, and this is from experience with players that I've spoken with where they basically don't talk to their players very much. And that's not the way that I ever wanted to do it. And listen, I do a million other things that I need to be better at. This is not me like saying, hey, that's the wrong way to do it, but it's just not why I like coaching to begin with and why I got into it. So, that would never work for me. But I think there are plenty of coaches who, especially now, treat it like it's a professional situation where, hey, man, we're here, we're going to handle our business, and that's the end of it. But for me, that's not satisfying or gratifying. It's not something that I would really get a whole lot of joy from day to day.
Yeah, that's great. I guess switching, pivoting a little bit, being a young coach, I think me and Steven have, I guess, different goals when it comes to coaching. For me, for example, I want to coach at the highest level. I want to be a Division I head coach one day. Like, I want to coach the NCAA tournament. Like, that is my end goal. I think something that I've really struggled with this year, I mean, this is my first year coaching, so I've struggled with everything, to be quite honest with you. But one thing that I've really struggled with, especially, I think, is my relationship building and my network building. Sometimes it can be a little bit intimidating going up to head coaches. We get a lot of Division I coaches in our gym, and going up there, almost like a cold call, right? You go up there, introduce yourself. Like, it just doesn't. It's not the most comfortable thing for me, and I think a lot of other young coaches out there. For you being a head coach, I guess just give some advice on, hey, if you're in my spot, one, what does it look like going up to a coach, like I said, cold calling them almost, and just talking to them? And two, what are some things that you say? What are some things that you ask? How do you go about that kind of thing?
I struggled with that a ton when I was a young assistant, when I was at UT Martin and VMI. Like, I hated it. It was very uncomfortable. I was much more into the organic, like, okay, I was fine with guys my age and everything like that, but guys my age weren't hiring people, And so I think you just have to treat them like normal human beings, be respectful. You're not going to say, and I don't think you're likely to say something that's going to catch their attention, and all of a sudden they're going to want to hire you next year. But what you can do is go and provide some value. Okay, well, this is what I know about this player, and this is what he's looking for, and this is how our experience has been with him, specifically to your situation, right?
Sure.
But you're going to be on the road. You're going to be, Pat Wallace is at Iona now, and him and I are really, really good friends. And one of the things that he did when I was at the Citadel as an assistant coach, and the way I got to know him, and this is how you just have to allow a little bit of some time to develop, and the organic relationships will become helpful for you over time. The fact that you played Division I college basketball and you and I have a relationship, like, now you have access to my coaching network as well, right?
Sure.
But what Pat did, and this is genius, in my opinion, is when he was a GA at Northwestern. Um, he would first of all he was much better at the just reaching out to people than I certainly was, right? So the way I got to know Pat, we had an assistant, Zach Durkee,
Yeah.
who had
Okay.
played at
Yep.
Charleston Southern,
Yeah.
right? And Pat and him were really close, best friends, and they had played together at Charleston Southern. Well, so he came to visit Durkee, and all of a sudden I get to know Pat. Pat does a great job of just checking back in, not being a pest or anything like that. But what he started doing was he would send edits and he would make edits of other programs he was watching. And he would go put together a 3 minute sports code edit, and it might be everything that Belmont ran in the last 5 minutes of a game. And it was super quick, super like, hey, this kid's studying. And he would just send it out, text it to you. And you would come in on a Tuesday morning, and now you would have this like, wait, these are really good ideas. I never would have had time to do this myself.
Wow.
And now you're like, well, that provided value. That got my attention. So I don't think that you're going to walk into a gym and say something all of a sudden changes your life or something like that. But I just think if you're a normal human being, you check in from time to time, realize that most of these guys are good dudes. And if you get somebody who's a jerk, then that's their problem, not yours. And you just keep it moving.
Is this something that you are intentional with? For example, like I'm looking down the list of teams that have played, today, tomorrow, whatever. I make a note in my phone saying, hey, if they win, like make sure to text them like after the game, like good win, whatever. Or is this just something that comes up, like you said, organically, like just over time, you see them working, like you just say what's up, every couple of months. Like how does that look?
Yeah, I think you just check in every now and then, right? You don't want to be over the top where it's so obvious that this is just a clear networking. Although, I mean, we're not naive. Like we've all been there ourselves, right? I mean,
Yeah.
like there's very few people who have this just easy rise to the top. I mean, unless guys played high major Division I basketball and now they are attached to some legendary coach and then they just move up. Like they did their work on the front end as being great players, right? But we've all been there, so we all kind of have an appreciation for it. And there's going to be times where coaches don't get back to you. Don't take it personal. I've been there. It feels personal.
Yeah.
But there is the reality of like, if I manage to not get back to somebody, I have three kids on the age of 7, and I'm still trying to figure out what the hell's going on in the transfer portal. And so it's not personal. Just, hey, a month later, check back in, bring something of value. I mean, there's a million different ways to go about it. And especially, listen, everybody's not the same person. People are more introverted, others are more extroverted. I was in the more introverted type or category, and there is no linear path to how you end up in this career. And my career path is the exact opposite of what most people think the career path should be.
Sure.
Yeah. Switching gears just a little bit. When you were the assistant coach on the FDU team that beat Purdue, what is the feeling like to know that you're like a part of the team? You're a part of the brainstorm of having one of the best upsets in March Madness history.
Yeah, I mean that's still something that every time it gets brought up, you get goosebumps, and I don't think that's ever going to go away. I just remember the feeling on the court of being just absolute euphoria and disbelief of like this you were really just a part of this. But you take a lot of pride in it. I was lucky enough to work on everything happened so fast, and you're obviously just trying to win the playing game, and then you realize, okay, we're going to go up against this behemoth and Purdue and the size that they had and how good they were that year, and Cam Morrell was really leading most of that scouting report, but I was involved with some of the sets and figuring out, make sure we had, what was going on from the set standpoint. He was doing most of the personnel. But Cam was the first one who was watching the film, and he was the first one to be like, I think we can beat these guys. And I don't know if I just had too much time in college basketball as assistant. I've been in a lot of these high major games. I'm like, okay, all right, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, sure, Cam. And Cam had been only coaching like 2 or 3 years at that point in time, and I'll be damned, he was right. I was dead wrong.
I think that was part of my next question was like I was gonna pull up that clip of Tobin Anderson saying, in the locker room, like, hey, I think we can beat them. And, it was kind of like a meme at first. And everyone was like, oh, like the 16 seed thinks they can beat the 1 seed. Like, how much did you actually believe before the game that you could beat them?
Listen, you go in there and you know that it's happened before, and you've seen UMBC beat UVA, right? Um, but I'm a pretty realistic person. So I'm not going to act like I went in there going like, yo, this is definitely going to happen. I went in there and thought, okay, we have a pretty good team. We're probably going to be able to hang around for a while. And then like in most of these Power 5 games, you eventually, the it's kind of an endurance race, right? Like they eventually just have more talent over an extended period of time, and the numbers play out the way they're supposed to play out. Um, but I will say this: the things that we did see on film ahead of time is we watched the Big Ten tournament, and they had been ahead in every single one of those games by a decent amount, and teams would go in there and press them late. I think Rutgers played them, if I'm right, if I remember correctly. I think Penn State played them, if I remember correctly, and they both pressed late in the game. And every time that we watched them go up against the press, they really struggled against it. Now, Braden Smith is a stud, and he was a stud back then, but he was still a freshman point guard. And the Big Ten doesn't see a whole ton of pressing, right? And the guards, that's a whole other conversation, I guess, in and of itself. But a lot of times, high majors are not built to beat low majors. It's a different type of player. And so it was kind of a perfect matchup for us where it's like, well, we press all the time and we press 94 feet in the entire night. And so there was some thought of like our strength is one of their few weaknesses. And then you had to pick how are you going to get beat? And when you're going up against teams that, I mean, probably any night, but especially teams that, they have a clear talent advantage over you, you have to decide that. Okay, if they're going to beat us, we're going to determine how they beat us. And we said they're going to beat us from the 3-point line. And we're going to sit there and bracket um, Zach Edey, and they're going to have to beat us from the 3-point line all night. And it kind of was a perfect storm where they turned it over a ton and they missed every shot. And then the pressure that's all on them just keeps stacking and stacking and stacking. We've all been there. You miss an open three, you're like, wait, I'm supposed to make that. And then you miss three of them, and now you're like, well, I don't know if I want to keep shooting this.
Right.
And you can see, if you go back and watch some of the clips, you can see some of their players literally start doing this. And like, this is not, I'm not very confident in this right now. And it just kept building and building and building. And we had really good players too. I mean, we had a bunch of we had 3 Division II transfers starting, but those guys had been winners and they had been to NCAA tournaments at Division II level and made runs. And they were shot makers. They were quick. They were athletic enough to play at that level. And there's an element of surprise to it too, So all that together played out to a perfect storm for us to win that game. But it's something you take a ton of pride in.
Yeah, Sean Moore had a great game that game, if I remember. And then Almanor, who was transferred for Kentucky, he was huge for you guys all season, especially like a small ball 5, spreading the floor and being able to stretch him out and shoot it.
Yep, he was great. Sean Moore hit a big time shot over Zach Edey right there that was way closer to getting blocked than I think people fully appreciate. I mean, that thing was pretty close to getting blocked. But I mean, Joe Munden made huge plays for us. The biggest play of the game, in my opinion, we had a kid by the name of Cam Tweedy who came on really late for us, undersized post player. And, he had not shown a whole lot outside of 15 feet in that point in the season. We knew he had a 15-foot jumper, but he hit a turnaround jumper as the shot clock expired with like 16 minutes left to go in the game. And that was the point where I turned to one of our other assistants and I said, I think we might actually do this. Because it was like, if we're going to make these shots tonight and their confidence is down, this might be the chance for it to happen.
Coach, you mentioned some D2 transfers that you had. I want to talk about my favorite Division II transfer, Joey Niesman, my guy, Joey Niesman, your starting point guard. He played 86% of minutes on the court this year for you guys, by far the most on your team. I guess just talk about how important he was, but also just how important a good floor general is, just in general, of how important that is. And then I guess a 2-part question. Is that something that I know this NIL landscape is so vast and so foreign to a lot of people that we don't really know how it looks, but is that something that you do value a little bit extra moving forward in evaluating maybe some extra dollars in some of these NIL deals that you make going forward?
Yeah, I think there's real truth to, I mean, I'm beginning to step my toe in this and really have a better understanding of what NIL is and how people are going about doing it. I mean, the reality is when we first got to this level, I mean, when that first happened, I never thought that it would trickle down to, all of Division I college basketball. I think we all thought it was going to be, hey, the high majors are going to have some money and there's going to be the rest of us. And that certainly hasn't ended up being the case entirely. I think what you're finding is people are valuing positions similar to the way the NBA does. And I found myself Googling how does the NBA structure their rosters and all that stuff, and what do they value, and how do they emphasize it. And college basketball and NBA basketball are not the same beast by any means, but there's obviously a lot of similarities and things that you can learn from the way the NBA does things. I think big men, and I know big men are really highly valued because they're more rare, right? And just like a really good point guard that can run the show is more rare, so you're going to value those guys as well. And I think if you have a scorer that can really score the basketball, there's a lot of value in that too. So, there's a million different ways to skin the cat with that thing, with the NIL, and everybody does it a little bit differently. But that's kind of some of the thought processes that I've had. Joey specifically is awesome. I mean, one of my favorite guys to coach of all time. I was really lucky this year, man. We had an unbelievable group of guys. Our culture was incredible. There was not one guy on that team who was not bought in. Now we went out of our way and recruited that. And honest to goodness, this is not a lie. When we put this team together, me and Coach Hayes sat down and talked, and we said we want a locker room like we had at the Citadel, where every single person in that room was a good dude. And I think it helped the way that we played basketball because everybody was bought in, everybody was very unselfish. If there were issues, people could talk honestly and truthfully to one another about them, and they could be addressed, and people could move on. There's just a lot of trust there. So we built our locker room like that. And Joey was a huge part of that. I mean, I did a deep dive, talking to his coach McKendry, and I called him probably 4 or 5 times in 2 days because it all happened so quick. I think he was tired of looking at his phone and seeing my number come up because it was a little bit redundant, and I'd have been annoyed too if I was him. But we wanted to make sure that we were getting a good person, and we wanted to make sure we fully understand what type of basketball player he was. And I mean, he was everything we asked for and then some. I mean, he's a dude who will give one of those win one for the Gipper type speeches. I mean, he might have said some things where I was like, yo, that's a little aggressive. But I'm glad he did, because you want a guy that kind of has that, just the perfect level of psychopath, in his heart. And he has that. And he was great for us. Third team all league,
Yeah.
came in, had a huge impact. He was great. Couldn't have been happier with him.
Yeah, I guess it's just a clarifying question. There's like an old cliche that just, it says pretty much just like the good, like the better the dude, like the nicer the basketball player. Like, is that something that like you even value at all? I know you just said that like
I
we
do.
look for some good guys, good like human beings, but like does that ever come back to bite you if they're too soft on the court?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, it does. I think there's a truth to that. You can still be nice and be mean on the court, you know. But
Do any Citadel guys bring to mind that you recruited on our
I,
team?
yeah, yeah, Steve, you were definitely one of those guys. Okay. Another guy that I would include in that, who I think we all would agree is one of the nicer human beings in the world, is Hayden Brown. I
Yeah.
mean,
Ooh.
Hayden Brown is as nice
Yeah.
as they come, but when you get in between the lines and it's time to compete, uh, there's no more competitive human being than him, and that I think is what made him great. It's just that he was that. It's not like Hayden lived in the gym now, you know,
That's
but
true.
Hayden loved to compete, and he was a freak athlete on top of that, and he had a confidence and a steadiness in himself that was, I think, that helped him navigate any struggles that he was having from a pure basketball standpoint, and he was incredible like that. So, we try to hunt for those guys that have that combination of a really good people, but just ultimate competitors, right? And this year's team, and I've talked to our players and staff about this too at the end of the year meetings, like, we were missing shot making, and we were probably missing like a quote unquote go-to scorer. We had a bunch of guys that were really good in their roles, and we were just a little light on the way I put together the roster from a scoring standpoint. But we had guys that were completely bought in. We had very good basketball players. I mean, we're going to have probably 5 guys that end up playing professional basketball off of this team that are graduating, at least 4. So there's things that I wish I would have done differently, but I tell you what, I would never change the way that we put together that locker room because those were absolutely the right guys, and I loved coaching them. I wish I could coach them. That was the hardest part about the year, was knowing that now it's over with, and
Sure.
we'll see what next year looks like. But I mean, I know we're going to have more retention of guys that played than we did last year, which is good and refreshing. And you feel like you can start to build a culture. And I think that our staff really felt at the end of the year, like, okay, well, this is actually the way that we want to do this. And listen, I've been lucky. I mean, all 3 years here, it's not like I've had good guys all the time, but this was the first one where it felt like everybody was kind of on the same page. And so we have to continue to build on that. But there is the reality of like, hey, some dudes that maybe aren't the nicest people in the world can hoop.
Yeah.
and And
Yeah.
there's plenty of times where I've thought, man, I wish this kid wasn't so damn nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you got to find that balance.
It kind of goes back to what you were saying too with the relationships, like you having a like people don't know, like Cole Alexander, a guy
Yeah.
that was both of our teammates, and then he's asking me like, hey, you think you could get me in with Coach Castleberry? And I give you a call, and you're like, hey, what kind of kid is he? And I'm like, he's a
Yep.
great kid, and he
Yep.
came up there and had a great time up there at FDU this year.
We had three guys that walked on for us this year, and Tyler McQuaid and Drew and Cole, and all three of those guys had a huge impact on how good we were this year because there was no ego to it at all. They just accepted their role. And I mean, we had guys, those guys could yell at the starters. I know for a fact that there was moments where they did, and the starters were like, "Yeah, you're right," and it was just became it was because the starters respected them, and as much as it mattered, basketball matters, they knew who they were as people, and they were engaged together, and they trusted each other, and they allowed that to happen, and made us all better.
Uh, Coach, we're gonna get a little bit into the weeds here. One of my favorite websites ever, Ken Palm. I'm sure you're very familiar with it.
Yeah,
Yeah, you guys, huge emphasis, I'm assuming, on offensive rebounding this year. You guys were top 130 in the entire nation on offensive rebounding percentage, and you guys were also top 50 in the nation in letting your opponents get offensive rebounds. I guess just talk about what did practices look like? Was that something you guys had an emphasis on? Was that something you guys, wrote before on the board before the games, like, hey, we're limiting these guys to this many, offensive rebounds? Like what does that look like with you guys?
yeah, we would talk about that. Now, the reality is, this was the first year that I ever specifically, and this is probably stupid on my part, but like we went out of our way to go recruit guys who had defensive and offensive rebounding numbers that made sense coming into this thing.
Sure.
We went out of our way in the portal to go find those numbers and make sure that we were getting that. We did absolutely talk about, we do boxing out drills probably every other day, not all the time. And even then, a lot of it was on a pad. It wasn't something we were actually going out of our way to just try to kill each other. There might have been. Do you guys remember Red Rover rebounding from the Citadel?
No,
I
Do
don't.
you remember 4-on-4-on-4 rebounding?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
You don't remember that, Steven?
Mm-mm.
Yes, I do remember
I
four.
don't. We're talking about almost like 4 years ago,
You
5 years
probably
ago.
you
Like I'm
probably you
starting.
probably
I remember
blocked it
four on
out.
four.
It was probably traumatic for you. Okay, so we call it.
I've been through two coaches since you guys. I think I'm starting to get stuff mixed up about who was who.
Well, we do some pretty physical rebounding drills early in the season, and then as it gets later, we do a lot on the pad. But we still tag up, and so tagging up's a huge part of that. And being a good offensive rebounding
Tagging.
team
Oh
is
wow,
that.
that just like brought
Yeah,
back
blast from the
that
past,
brought
right?
back like a memory in my ear. What
Yeah.
what was tagging up again?
Yeah, can you touch on that?
So tagging up Aaron Fern, who unfortunately was just let go with Charlotte, but's had a very successful career. Was a great coach in the NBL down in Australia. He started tagging up, and tagging up is basically like the person in front of you is going to be your matchup in transition. And I think a lot of people think of it as an offensive rebounding system, and to some degree it is. But the reality is, from my learnings of it, is that it's a defensive transition system first and foremost that allows defensive transition to be much simpler. For us at the Citadel, it took the amount of time that we were in transition, cut it in half significantly. And so that why it was effective for us. But it also puts you in really good offensive rebounding position because you have all five guys going to the glass every time. And now the biggest thing about tagging up is you're not going past the guy boxing you out. You're just trying to engage with the person that's boxing you out and driving them under. And the things that we used to talk about all the time, you guys remember this when I say it, we talked about rebounding pockets, right? And the rebounding pocket was everything from, if you're a defensive rebounder, everything from your body to the front of the rim was your rebounding pocket, and you wanted to extend your rebounding pocket out as far as possible. Well, offensively, we're trying to shrink that rebounding pocket. So we're trying to drive them under legally without shoving them in the back. And that way, if you have five guys doing that, you think you're getting some of the longer rebounds, more of those type of rebounds with five guys going to the glass. Now, when you get out in transition, there's no like, I have to go find this guy, I have to go find this guy. Like your matchup in transition is the person that is directly in front of you, the person that boxed you out. So it kind of simplifies transition. Yes, you will end up in a few cross matches, but what I've found is while you might not always get the perfect matchup, the reality is there's not as nearly there's not nearly as many open men, right? And usually open guys get you beat significantly more than the matchups do, specifically at this level of college basketball.
Mm.
Yeah, I could be way off base here. You guys were 340th in the nation in tempo. Is that because is there a direct correlation of like how hard you guys would crash the defensive rebounding, and maybe you guys didn't have as many leak outs going in transition? Is there any type of correlation there, or was it a point of emphasis to like, hey, let's slow it down, let's run through some plays, let's see what we're getting on offense, or am I just like way off base there?
No, I think there's a little bit of that because obviously when you stop their transition, now they're going to have more time in half court offense. And
Sure.
so by eliminating that transition, that certainly plays into that. Now, the other side of that, we never intended to play this slow. We got here, and our team probably laughed about this when they heard me talking about it. Like, it became clear after like 5 games, like we were not built to play an offensive transition. Like we were throwing that thing in the third row. It was not who we were. So it got to the point where we were literally like, yo, there better be nobody between you and the basket if you're going to go in transition. Like, stop, slow this down. We're going to get into a set every time. That's not how we've ever played in the past.
Sure.
It's how we played this year. It's not how I think we'll play moving forward, but it was what worked for us. So, yeah, it was a slow style of basketball at FDU this year.
Yeah.
Um, Coach, we talked a little bit about like what you look for kind of like as a person when you're recruiting. What are some like basketball things you look for in recruits, and does it change between looking in the portal or looking at a high schooler?
Well, I think when you're looking at a high school kid now, the first thing you're thinking about is, are they physically gifted enough to be able to compete right away? And the
Mm,
one thing you know about a portal kid is that this kid can play at this level. It's very clear cut. You're not having to project as much, which is part of the reason the portal is so enticing to guys because you want to get older. It's the easiest way to stay older is just to recruit older, right? But I think, you're looking at a lot more numbers in the portal than you are in a high school kid because you can trust those numbers more, right? Like I know that somebody's offensive defensive rebounding rate to the point we talked about earlier, Dylan, we're like that's going to carry over to what we do here, even if it's on a smaller scale, right? If like for instance, if I looked at Kirill Martinov from last year when he was at East Kentucky, he did not play very much there, but his offensive defensive rebound numbers were very good, and I was able to look at Ken Palm and go game log, game log, game log, and see like, hey, okay, he might not have played much here, but when he did play, his offensive efficiency was this, and now I can put that together with the eye test, right? And so between those two things of watching this film and looking at his numbers, I can feel pretty comfortable about what I should expect out of him at this level. And he was incredible for us this year. He was great. He's going to be a pro because he actually decided to come to FDU and got an opportunity, right? High school kids, I think a lot of times what you're looking at because you don't have as many numbers to kind of verify, and this is important either way, but like how well can a kid pass the basketball? Because if a kid can pass the basketball, he really has a pretty good idea of how to play basketball, in my opinion, right? Shot making is shot making at any level, right? If a kid can make shots at the high school level, you're thinking they're probably going to be like him at the college level. The question you're going to talk about then at the high school level is how slow does he get it off? Now, a lot of guys can't get it off at the same speed they do, but usually you just have to work on speeding that up when they get to college. So that's not the end of the world either. Um, for a high school kid, man, the thing we preach all the time that high school kids, and myself included, I was awful at this. And this wasn't taught quite as often when I was playing because that was 20 years ago. But playing off of 2 feet. Like if a high school kid plays off of 2 feet
yeah.
consistently, like that's a really mature thing. And when our guys don't play off of 2 feet in college, the first thing I go is, we're not in high school. Why are you playing like you're in high school? Play off of 2 feet. You got it. You have more balance, you have more time, you have more patience. Or excuse me, you have more opportunity when you're playing off of 2 feet. Especially if you don't have, we used to call this the civil an advantage layup. If my shoulder wasn't by his shoulder, I don't have the advantage. I play off of 2 feet, right? So if guys can do those things, it certainly matters. How physical a guy's going to be is really important to me, especially for a high school kid, because you're looking at can he play right away, stuff like that. And then, of course, with everybody, the shot making. And the reality is the defensive side of the basketball. Now, we were not a very good defensive team this year, and we knew we weren't going to be as good because the way we recruited, we were trying to get more offensive. But you got to be able to keep the ball in front. And there's a sliding scale on this, right? If you're an elite shooter or an elite scorer, people are willing to let you slide a little bit more on defense. Now, if you can do both those things, now you're a real problem, right? So it's not one magic bullet of, hey, this is exactly what we look for, but you do look for guys that can control their emotions a little bit, that are very competitive. All that stuff plays into it.
Yeah, I think that's a good point though. Playing off 2 feet, I think Dylan's played for three coaches now in college.
Yeah.
I played for three coaches. Like I think that's a common theme among a lot of coaches is playing off 2 feet. I mean, I
Well,
know that was huge with Coach Conroy the year
Yeah.
after, and then um, Coach Barry is probably a little bit less on that. We worked a lot off quick finishes. Playing in the SEC with bigger defenders that can block shots and stuff like that. But
Uh, Coach, one thing I think the biggest thing that I've noticed, the biggest difference between playing and coaching, it's really easy to get better as a player. You need a ball in a court. You go into the gym, you just shoot around. It's not too difficult. How do you get better as a coach? What does that look like? Is it just watching games? Is it studying stuff? Like how does it look to get better as a coach?
I think there's a balance to it. I do think that as you rep it out and just have more experience interacting with players and teaching things a certain way, you do start to realize what works for you and what doesn't, and what gets through to certain players and what doesn't. And that is a little bit different for every single person, right? So I think there's a lot of that. I do think film study is one of the most important things you can do to get better at the actual basketball X and O's. I mean, it's so unique. I mean, coaching to me is, I mean, there's a pure scheme part, right, where you can decide how do I want to play, how do I get better at that. There's how do I get better at roster management, how do I get better at recruiting, how do I get better at building those relationships. There's how do I get better at building honest relationships with players, and then figuring out what that distance is properly, what it should be. Some of that comes with age, and I mean some of the stuff you can't rush. I mean some of it you just have to make those mistakes, and it's you don't get to just start brand new every day. I mean, you kind of got to go through a whole season and figure out every team's different on top of that. So you get different challenges every year. And I think all that, just builds up to make you a better coach. But, I do think you have to I think you have to read a lot. I think reading a lot was huge for me. I don't read nearly as much as I used to now that I have three kids. I got a feeling that as they get a little bit older, that'll kick back in a little bit more when there's a little more time. But I know that as a young assistant, I read like crazy, and I read all the books from all the high level coaches. I mean, this year I read Dan Hurley's book. That was an incredible book, and it's one of the things about his book that I really enjoyed is it's not some book that's telling you how to coach or how to be. It's just like this is me, and this is
Sure.
who I am. And for me, I don't know, everybody's a little bit different with this. Like that was really cool to see the very human side of an extremely successful basketball coach.
Sure.
And it took away the facade that, especially young assistants or young guys trying to break into coaching. I think we tend to I mean, I put people on pedestals, and they were infallible, and I was never, good enough, for lack of a better term, in my own mind. And the reality is, like, hey, man, they're humans just like you are, and they have their own struggles. And I think reading about those struggles from each person actually gave me a lot more confidence that things can work out.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Coach, this is my favorite question that I have. I can't take credit for it. I watch a podcast. I listen to a podcast called Slapping Glass. They ask this question at the end of every
I know.
episode, and I'm about to ask you the same exact question. What is the best investment that you made as a young coach, whether it be a relationship, whether it be something that you bought, an idea that you bought into mentally? What is the best single investment that you made as a young coach?
I think, everybody always says relationships on that thing,
Yeah,
and yeah, that's true. Okay, but that to me is kind of a given that
sure,
you have to invest in people. I do think there's the reality of the organic relationship, the one that's genuine, not the one where it's like, hey, we're clearly just having this relationship because we think we can, maybe help each other, and so, or maybe that other person can help me in some way,
sure.
shape, or form. So investing in the organic ones is absolutely true, right? Thing that helped me a lot as a young assistant was going to other people's practices and seeing different
Mhm.
ways that they ran things, because you can very easily be caught in, hey, this is how I do this. This is one way that our coaching staff does this, and if you don't get out and experience different things, I think you just limit yourself, right? And you lose a little creativity. The other thing I did that was really good, and this is so much easier now. I used to go to coaching clinics all the time, and now you can get all this information at the drop of a dime. So something like Slapping Glass and the website they have, and investing in those things, and they make knowledge so easily attainable. amongst all the other podcasts that there are out there. Those are huge to helping just your actual basketball knowledge grow.
I guess kind of going off of that, how much of coaching is your own ideas and how much of it is just like, hey, I'm just going to steal literally all of my ideas from every single thing that I watch or that I listen to or that I see another team doing?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I kind of had that same question with like how do you choose like what kind of style like your whole program is going to be about X's and O's wise.
yeah. So that's a little bit different for everybody. I think what you end up seeing is that teams tend to play to the personality of their head coach, and that's not an original thought either. But I'm not this super aggressive, um, uh, take a ton of risks kind of guy, right? So Tobin was a press everywhere, big
Sure.
risk reward guy. Coach B was that way
Yeah.
for the first, I mean, he still is that way. But we pressed all the time. And my first year at VMI, my senior year at VMI, Coach B, we averaged 101 points per game, and we pressed the entire game. Okay, I was running all over I played 15 minutes a game, and I would have thought I ran a marathon because you were just constantly trapping, right? That's not my personality. I'm much more like, hey, let's just be solid. Let's do this defensively. Really, the way we played at the Citadel the last 2 years defensively was much more of kind of my mindset. Now, because of Tobin, because of Coach B, I do think in the future we'll press more and we'll kind of do it more sporadically. So there's a little bit of a balance there that I'm comfortable with. And it's taken me, honestly, 3 full years of basketball to feel, as a head coach, to feel comfortable with how I want to play both offensively and defensively. And I'm sure that will be a constant adjustment. I steal like crazy. There's not that many new ideas in basketball that hasn't
Yeah.
been done
Yeah.
before. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
people are still doing the pick and roll. Pick and roll has been around for 80 years. Okay. Maybe we'll finagle a positioning of it, and that's really the end of it. But it's really stealing. I mean, honestly, I kind of think it's funny. I steal from our own league all the time. Like, there's kind of something cool about running somebody else's play on them and
Yeah.
scoring. Um, so I steal a lot, and a lot of times I have a thing on if I'm watching any film on an upcoming opponent and I see that another team, and I'm not alone in this. I'm sure everybody does this. I see another team scored on them this way. Well, I'll take that exact way they scored, and I'll try to fit it into what we do. And so I have a whole custom method on Synergy of just plays I like, actions I like, and I'll just drag it over, and I'll be able to reference that moving forward. So, there's a ton of stealing. I mean, we get creative about the way that we do. I think where our creativity tends to come from just in how we build our drills, right? We'll be thinking about, well, how do we work on this skill set that's not the same mundane thing that they've seen 100 other times, and what do we need to work on, and how can we simulate this best possible way? I mean, that's where I think our staff's creativity comes into play. But I am lucky. I have a staff of people that are a lot smarter than me that have no problem telling me when I'm wrong, and so they help get me out of my little habits and things like that. They'll help provide some different thought processes to how we want to do things.
Nice. All right. Well, March Madness. Gotta ask you your March Madness. Give me who you think is gonna win it all, and then give me who is your double digit upset.
All right, so I filled this out because I knew this was coming, and I'm not gonna lie to you. I watch college basketball, and I usually watch like my level of college basketball. I watch some high major stuff when it's on late at night, but
Yeah.
during the season, you're caught so much into kind of your next scout and everything, and
Are your brackets
it's
normally pretty good, or do you is it
terrible. No,
terrible? Well,
I think the more you're supposed to know, the worse you are, right?
I can agree with that.
It's the person picking off of like the mascots that's an elite bracket buster person, right? So I have Houston winning it all, and that is probably more heart than anything else. I just think what Coach Sampson's done down there is just absolutely incredible, and the way he goes about building a program and the way he is as a coach is something that I've always admired, and I really want to see him win one. So I have Houston and Arizona in the finals. As far as my biggest upset goes, I have Queens beating Purdue. Okay.
Wow,
Now,
throwback. Come
that
on.
is that is not meant to be about me or my experience. That is for my guy Grant Leonard at Queens, who employed me for 6 weeks before I left Queens to go up to FDU. And so I would love for him to have that experience. He's a hell of a coach. What he's done at Queens, they're excuse me, not finally. the first year of eligibility in the NCAA Division I college basketball tournament, and he gets in that thing. He's an incredible coach, and they've done a great job there. So I want to see him get one.
Yeah, I feel like you would have fit in pretty well with him if you would have gone there. My upset pick, I told Dill earlier, I got Hawaii over Arkansas.
Okay.
And the thought process behind it is not what you think. You know, me and Dill talked about it a little bit. You know, they're very good defensively, like rated on Kim Palm and stuff. They play no help. I don't know if you've watched it at
Right.
all.
No, I've
They
seen
play
it. I've
no
seen it.
help.
It's
They
incredible. Yep.
funnel. They're all one on one. They funnel to their big man down low, and that is a perfect storm for Arkansas for Darius Acuff and like NBA level players just to ISO. So it's
Uh,
completely like reverse psychology thinking that because it's so favorable to Arkansas, I think Hawaii's going to win.
I think there is a lot to be said for that pick and the reasoning behind why, especially when you're seeing something different that you haven't seen all year for the first time and it's
Mm-hmm.
in the NCAA tournament. That's wild. Um, I think Mercyhurst, he's a great coach at Mercyhurst. They do some
Yeah,
unique things defensively in
yeah.
the way that they help and slide. And so it's like because it's so different than everything else you see the rest of the year, they turn people over like crazy. So I think the logic there is really good, man. That's a sharp pick by you, Steven. I'm proud of you, buddy.
We'll see.
Coach, I think I'm supposed to give my upset pick right now, but I literally cannot help but ask you another hypothetical question. I just love asking questions. I love talking. If you tomorrow your job doesn't exist anymore and you could be the head assistant under any coach in the entire nation, who would you
Hmm.
be? Who would you be underneath? What would it be?
That's a really good question.
I know you mentioned Kelvin Sampson. Is it just as
Ton
easy
of
as
respect
Houston
for
or
him. No, ton of respect for him. There's a lot of good coaches out there. I would either go him or Izzo, probably.
Mm,
Ooh.
Him or Coach Izzo. I mean, because those guys are, and there's other guys out there. Obviously, there's a million guys out there that do this thing right. Honestly, Matt Painter at Purdue, like guys that just have maintained a consistent level of success that I think are about the right things and build and genuinely build programs. Um, I think that's really impressive, and that's something that I genuinely admire and would want to find out more about how they do it. Now, I do think, and there's some high major coach who probably slapped me for saying something like this because I don't know what that high major experience is like. I've always been at low major schools, um, but I do think to some degree these high majors can still build programs in a manner that's different than low majors right now because they have enough money to pay the guys and keep the guys that they want to keep. I think you can have more of a 4 year experience at a place. Not that it's happening as often as it should. I know what was the stat that came out like the Big Ten this year? Only
two.
it was two.
I think it
That
was two. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, so obviously I'm wrong, but I know Purdue has a very strong history of keeping their guys for a long
Yeah.
period of time. But no, it's incredible what those three guys have done, and I'd be more than lucky just to be on any of those stats.
Dill, what about you? I feel like I have a thought of who you would pick.
Yeah, like uh I want to say Mark Pope. The struggles have been real this year. Like, they haven't been up to par how they normally are. I think he's a very talented offensive mind, but I think this year they've been struggling a little bit. There's hints of like maybe a Nate Oates in there too. If I had to pick maybe like a Brad Underwood, I think that'd be a lot of
Another
fun.
That's another really good pick. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's another
yeah.
really good
I
pick.
thought you would go more Kevin Young at
Kevin Young
BYU
would be great.
or
Yeah, I mean
John
that'd be.
Shire. Because I feel
I
like you're
mean,
really
yeah,
built
yeah,
into like the NBA style teams. You
yeah,
talk a lot about them usually, so
yeah.
that's
I
who I think
think
you would pick.
Kevin Young would be a close second for me, and then probably Jack Hass will be a close third after that.
You pick better than that, man. I appreciate you throwing one out there for me, but yeah, you need to pick better than that.
Yeah. Speaking of Nate Oates, my upset pick, since we got to get back to that, I'm going Hofstra. Aiden Holloway just getting into some stuff he probably shouldn't be getting into as probably a millionaire at this point. But yeah, I'm going Hofstra 13 over 4. I feel like it happens every year. Alabama can be shaky in the tournament sometimes. So Hofstra's offense is really good too. And Alabama has not been playing as great as they normally do. So I'm doing it, Steve. I'm doing the 13 over the 4 there. I'm picking Hofstra.
Well, I guess we got two 13 over fours from
And we got a
Bridgeport.
15 over a 2.
Say
Yeah,
nobody,
golly,
not as bold as this pick. Yeah.
golly. You got any more, Dill?
Coach, thank you so much. It was a lot of fun having you on here. Let's do it again at some point in the near future.
Sounds good to me, man. Anytime.